John Miduchevsky marched hand in hand with other protesters demanding equality and justice. We saw high school children march to have their voices heard, much like what our high school kids, Paige Singer and Michaela Houston, have planned for this Thursday. We even saw major corporations come together and raise over $1 billion to invest in communities to bring about a systemic change. I believe this time it is different. I believe we are at an inflection point. So how can we in Homedale contribute to this positive change? We are fortunate that our Homedale police officers genuinely care for our community and have been exemplary in helping our community during this pandemic. We received several letters from people in our community stating how our police went above and beyond during this difficult time. I have the highest regard for our police officers and Chief Miduchevsky. However, we cannot remain complacent. Even though Homedale may not experience the issues that large cities face, we must still remain vigilant and be better prepared. We must make sure that we provide our police with whatever tools they need so they can continue to foster a good relationship with the community and protect themselves. As a township committee person, I plan on voting yes to procure the technology to support use of body cameras, which our police chief had already included in his plan for the department this year. And I was happy to hear that de-escalation training is mandatory in our police department. I will work towards more diversity and inclusion in our hiring process across all departments at the township. To the Board of Education, I would like to request that they include diversity education and training as part of their curriculum to our children and start this education early. While these top-down policy changes help make systemic changes possible, these changes don't become indoctrinated in all of us until we each work hard to eradicate the silent undercurrent of racism that exists in our society, in our communities. This is the most important thing we can do to finally get us to the right side of history. We cannot remain silent until then. Thank you.
Thank you, Committeeman. Deputy Mayor, I know you've been in communication with the chief, who shared some communication with the Township Committee and the Administrator this afternoon. Do you have anything?
Yes. So first of all, I'd like to thank Committeeman Santana for that statement, which I support wholeheartedly. Secondly, I'd like to say after the murder of George Floyd, I had to look myself in the mirror and ask, what can I do about this? And one of the things that I could do as a township committee person and deputy mayor was to, and someone new who's been in this position for all of 5 months now, was to find out more about our police department and make sure they have the resources and training to be an effective and community-based police force. And honestly, while my personal experience has been incredibly positive, I wasn't that knowledgeable. So I asked those questions about body cameras and de-escalation training and other training and policies, and was pleased to receive the following letter to the entire Township Committee from the chief. And I would just like to read this into the record because I'm incredibly proud of this response, and I think all of our residents should be aware of it. Members of the Homedale Township Committee, and this is from John Miduchevsky, Chief of Police. I'm taking this opportunity to communicate with you regarding the horrific murder of George Floyd at the hands of police in Minneapolis. Those actions are inexcusable and go against what police officers stand for. What happened is an indelible stain that deteriorates the trust and support that we rely on in order to perform our duties. Homedale police officers, in particular, receive extensive training in use of force, handcuffing, unarmed self-defense, de-escalation, cultural diversity, and much more. None of that training nor any policy we have in place would allow for such an atrocious display of police misconduct. The actions would never be tolerated by any member of this department. Not only was the former officer who committed the murder wrong, but the other officers on the scene who failed to intervene were equally responsible. Our department has always been a proponent of transparency. We are one of the first departments in this area to utilize dash cameras. We sought and received a grant of almost $65,000 and have been in the process of equipping all of our officers with body cameras. It is our goal to have them operational before the end of the year. We remain committed to protecting the free speech of those who want to peacefully protest, with the hope that Mr. Floyd's death can bring about societal reform. Our officers and I have assisted at numerous marches and vigils in Monmouth County. We will continue to do this to ensure that these voices will be clearly heard. In the aftermath of George Floyd's death, I have had conversations with residents about their concerns. We continually strive to maintain open lines of communication with the citizens we serve, not just in times like these, but at all times. Our oath is to serve and protect everyone who lives, works, worships, visits, or travels through our community. That is an oath that we take solemnly and will never change. Respectfully, Chief John Medashevsky. And Chief, I thank you and your department for that. It allows us to move forward and make progress, and it allows each and every one of us to ask what we can do. And I would just like to close with a saying, as I've reached out to try to examine my own biases and to see what I can do. I want to share these words from a young Black child. And it was on a poster she was carrying. It said, "We said Black Lives Matter. We never said only Black Lives Matter. We know all lives matter. We just need your help with Black Lives Matter, for Black lives are in danger." Out of the mouth of Babe. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Does anybody else have any comment or on the subject? So I want to thank the chief for sending the Township Committee that email this afternoon and articulating that position. We've gotten requests from different residents, and I wanted to take this at the front of the meeting so everyone could see the response and the position of the two papers just read. So thank you both. With that being said, we'll move into the regular part of the meeting. So first is public comment on agenda items on tonight's agenda. Are there any public comments on the agenda items on tonight's agenda?
Karen Strickland here has her hand raised.
Okay. Karen, if you could hear me, you can just take yourself off mute and state your name and address.
Karen Strickland, 26 Hayward Hills Drive, Homedale. You can hear me?
Yep.
Okay, good. Two things. One was on the park proposal. I thought that seemed very nice. You know, Homedale really has wonderful parks and recreation, and I think it's wonderful. But the issue I wanted to say something about was on the fair share housing, affordable housing. You know, we have to do this, and I understand it has to be done, but I think we want to be really sensitive and do everything in the right way, and I just can't stand determining the name of the project. I mean, the name of it as the project. I mean, the idea of projects is, you know, it's a pejorative. We live in the projects. It has connotations that are so negative. And why we would call this the project, I don't know. It feels like we should call it, you know, I had just I didn't have much time to think about it, but something like the developments or the subdivision or, you know, the townhouses or something, but just call, words count. And I just think that maybe we could figure out a better way to talk about this effort, this initiative, this agreement that we have to do in any other language except the project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, if I may, to that, it's referenced in the resolution, just so that the full name of it doesn't have to be rewritten multiple times. I'm trying to pull it up because I don't remember the full name of the Middle Road project, but I believe it's Homedale Family Homes, and it's just, we use that just like HMFA will say the agency, or just to reference it so that we don't have to write it out every single time. But it does have a separate name, and we can definitely make a more conscious effort to call it by that name. That's a very good point.
Thank you. Anybody else in the public on agenda items?
Next up is Mike Sockel.
Mike, you take yourself off mute, or Carrie, take him off mute, and then state your name and address.
This is Mike Sockel, 6 Wild Hedge Lane, Homedale. I apologize. I wasn't sure what part of the meeting you were at. If this is the portion that's only agenda items, I can wait until the end. But I will really quickly, because of something that Prakash just said. Prakash, the school district does have a class that all 8th graders must take that is entitled Intolerance, and it deals with all of the issues that you were addressing. It's a class that we put into place earlier this year and is a requirement for all the 8th graders. But I'll wait until later to chat with all of you.
Yep, thank you. Thank you, Mike. I do have a question for you on that.
Yeah, I'm here. Sure, go ahead.
And when we come back, we come back.
We'll do it at the back end, please. Thank you. Anything else for agenda items, Carrie and Hugh?
No other hands up.
Okay. So the first is tabled agenda item resolution 2020-166 from our May 26 meeting, resolution proprietary purchase of ALCO test software, Dragger quote. We have a motion.
I thought that was still tabled. I'm sorry, I've never had a tabled resolution. I thought it was still placed on the agenda as tabled. I think there was a tweak that we wanted to make with that. So we can hold on that one for
Is
tonight.
it remaining table?
Oh, okay. I thought we were supposed to discuss.
I'm
it.
sorry, I've never seen a tabled resolution in Homedale, so I thought we just kept it on until we voted for it. My apologies.
Okay, so if we're not looking to advance it, the committee could either just leave it as is or take a vote to table it again. Either way would be fine.
Leave it.
Okay.
Okay. So consent agenda items 2020-179 through 2020-190. I'd like to pull 2020-188 for a separate vote.
Yes, 188, the Parks Program. I spoke with the administrator. Yeah, Mayor, if you could pull that down.
I'm sorry, 189. I apologize. I'm reading backwards.
Okay, I would ask Mayor if you could pull 188. The administrator and I wanted to make a note on that one.
Okay, I'm pulling 188 and 189.
189 as well? Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So motion on agenda items minus 188 and 189.
Move.
Your second?
Prakash, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Vitale?
Yes.
Mr. Santana?
Yes.
Ms. Weber?
Yes, with a note.
Mayor Bontempo?
Yes. So 188, Counselor?
Yes, Mayor, I spoke with the administrator, and just for the wording of the resolution, she requested that a motion be made to adopt the resolution with the slight amendment that it delegates authority to the administrator to make minor modifications to the program as it's laid out in the attachment.
That's fine. Make a motion.
Move.
Roll
Second.
call.
Mr. Vitale?
Yes.
Mr. Santana?
Yes.
Ms. Weber?
Yes.
Mayor Bontempo?
Yes. So 189, affordable housing. By law, we're obligated to put this on the agenda for this evening. As I stated previously, I have some concerns about our affordable housing, but this is a requirement of the court, so we'll take a separate vote on this. Now, I think you need to move forward. You need a motion and a second.
Can I get a little background on this? Since I've never been involved in any of these conversations for years. What's the purpose of this resolution, and how does it impact the project and the color plan?
So this is a resolution specifically about the Middle Road project. It's a resolution in needs stating that we have the need for affordable housing in the town. And this is so that the developer that has been chosen by the township can apply for tax credits through the program. The application is, or the hearing is in August, and the application is due on June 18th. Mike, I don't know if you have anything to add.
No, that I think the administrator summarized that well.
So we have a motion.
Move.
We have a second.
It's a second.
Roll call, Wendy.
Mr. Catali?
I guess I'll just abstain.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Are you recusing, committeeman?
I'm just going to abstain.
Mr.
If
Santana?
everyone would put their microphones on mute until you're speaking, it would be helpful, I think.
Mr. Santana?
I support the mayor. No.
Ms. Weber?
Yes.
Mayor Bontempo?
Yeah, I'm concerned about this one with the potential issue we're having with some of the residents over there. So I am a no.
Okay.
Motion fails.
Okay.
Next item on the agenda is introduction of ordinance, Wendy.
Introduction of bond ordinance 2020-11 is a bond ordinance providing an appropriation of $2,755,000 for the 2020 road improvement program in and by the Township of Homedale in the County of Monmouth, New Jersey, and authorizing the issuance of $2,350,000 bonds or notes of the township for financing part of the appropriation. Motion to adopt on first reading, publish in the Asbury Park Press, and set public hearing for Tuesday, June 23rd, 2020.
Motion.
Have a second.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Vitale?
Yes.
Mr. Santana?
Yes.
Ms. Weber?
Yes.
Mayor Bontempo?
Yes.
Okay, so the ordinance will be published and on the next meeting for public hearing.
Perfect.
Could I make a comment on this? So if you remember last year when I ran with Deputy Mayor Weber for the Township Committee, I stated that we need to, every time we have a bond ordinance, we need to state exactly what we're doing so that people are fully aware and that we are fully transparent where the money is going. So to that end, I checked with our town administrator, and Sharon mentioned that we already have the list of roads published on our website. So it actually states the roads that will be impacted by this bond ordinance. I want to point out that we want to make sure that every time we have a bond ordinance, if it is standard capital improvement, we have to list the items that are impacted by it, or the structures impacted by it. And if it's not a standard capital improvement project, we show our return on investment. Thank you.
Thank you. So updates from department. Misha, do you want to go first?
I have no additional update. The engineer is going to provide the update on the firehouse that we've discussed, and everything else has been covered tonight.
Thank you. CFO Bill, any updates?
No additional updates tonight.
Counselor, any updates?
No update, Mayor. Thank you.
Ben, engineer.
Thank you, Mayor.
So we are advancing the plan for the firehouse. Sharon, I don't know if you have
I do. I will. You want yours or the architect's first?
you can do I guess the architects is fine. So we met with the fire department through a Zoom meeting, of course, last week, and we discussed, their I guess the requests of, what we presented them, the plan of the layout of the building, the layout of the site. There was some good feedback that we got from them. The architect got a lot of information from them regarding the interior of the building and the layout and how things were going to be done. Certain things like finishes on the floors and things like that. So what we have here is the layout of the building. The garage bays are at the bottom there on the left, and then the main living area and kitchen and meeting and everything and dining room is on top. To give you a perspective, the Garden State Art Center Road is basically at the bottom of the screen. There it's a rotated view. The gray hatched area is the firehouse and the garage you can see there. So Garden State Art Center Road is on the right there. Crawford's Corner Road on the bottom. So trucks would, as you know, trucks would enter off of Garden State Art Center Road and come in through the back, what I call the back, and it would be a drive-through garage, as we've previously discussed. Then there's a shared driveway out the front there with the post office and the rest of the site that the fire trucks would exit in case of a call. One of the things that we had to work on was the post office. Basically, where the garage is now is proposed. The post office has about 22 parking spaces there. So we're working with them to relocate the parking spaces. We've sent them this plan to move their parking to the back behind the post office. They have a total on site right now of about 37 spaces. So this plan will accommodate all of those parking spaces. And it'll actually even improve their site because the way they have it now, it's just not a very good system. Their parking spaces are double stacked. Their drive aisle is too narrow, and they don't have any handicap parking spaces. That's not ADA accessible. And then you see in the back, on the top of the screen, you've got parking for the firehouse itself. That's an expansion on the parking lot for the senior center. The senior center on the left there, the parking lot behind there will remain, and we'll expand on that. One of the things the fire department requested was they wanted to see at least 30 spaces. We're providing about 40 in this plan. This is preliminary, but that's the plan we have at this point. Another thing that they requested was a picnic area. So we're providing that behind the firehouse next to where the cell tower currently is. So the architect has mentioned this before. I'm not sure about it in public, but this is a very iterative process. There's a lot of collaborative effort between myself, the architect, the fire department. We're advancing everything simultaneously. So as the plans get developed, the site plans get developed, the architectural plans can move along a little bit further. Then we can advance certain things along the way. I know architecturally that the fire department had requested some larger bays. I think the ones they currently have, they have about 6 inches of space to squeeze the truck through. I hear they bang their mirrors all the time. So we're providing a good size garage for them. And we're working with them as much as we can to make sure that we're accommodating their needs. Township needs. That's pretty much where we are right now. It's still preliminary, but we're advancing the plans, and the architect is advancing their plan as well.
So Ben, the next step is really get the approval with the post office for the adjustment on the property, get the plans drawn up from the architect, go out to bid, and as soon as we go out to bid, then we could schedule a start of shovel in the ground for construction for later this year, correct?
That's correct.
Hey, Ben? Ben, can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm a little concerned about the joining of the two parking lots from the senior center and the firehouse. Is that necessary? Can't we come in off of PNC Art Center Drive and come around the back of the firehouse to access that parking lot? I don't think we should be commingling the two sites.
Yeah, we tried to do that, but you've got the cell tower right at the top of the screen there. It's the fence isn't shown, but that fence for the cell tower goes right up to that curb line that's drawn there. So there really isn't any way to get around that. If we push the firehouse down to accommodate that, then we're encroaching too much into the post office, and we're not able to accommodate their parking. So it's really, there's a lot of obstacles that we have to work around, and this is our, the best way to do it.
There may be, I'm not on mute, okay. There may be some ability, and I'm stressing the word may, up over here, if you can see the cursor, or even down here for like 1 or 2 cars, if it's just a quick something that our firemen or women need to run in or out of the building. Right, Ben, we had talked about.
Yeah, there's a little. Yeah, I'm sorry. There's a little bit of space up there, or possibly down lower where you're exiting the garage. It's possible we could squeeze in a few spaces, but definitely the bulk of the parking needs to be up at the top there.
I understand up at the top, but I'm trying to think of when firefighters have to respond to a fire. I mean, they just got to come all the way around and through behind the senior center, through their parking lot, and then all the way through that parking lot to get to the fire trucks. It sounds like it could be a delay. All right, well, it's a work in progress. Just want to express my concern.
Yeah. It's something we're definitely exploring all of our options. So we'll definitely look at that. I'm pretty confident that we have the best layout here, but we'll take a look at it and see if there's another way to do it. Perhaps merging the two parking lots together with the post office is a way to do it. But we'll do everything we can to make sure the fire department is satisfied and they're comfortable with it, with their response times.
Thanks, Ben. Any other questions, guys? Gals? Cool. Ben, thank you.
Thank you.
Perfect. Nothing else, Ben, from the engineer?
Nothing further, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Boards, committees, update. Committeeman Critelli, any updates?
Nothing tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Committeeman Santana, any updates?
Prakash, you're muted again. We didn't hear you.
Nothing here.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Mayor?
Yes, I'm pleased to report we had the first meeting of the Traffic and Bike Safety Committee. And I want to thank our entire committee for making the meeting, including Officers Manowski and Struble from the police department. It was our first chance to kind of get to know each other, talk about our duties and what we plan to accomplish. And so we're really in the very preliminary stages, but we're looking at doing a lot of research. We noted that one silver lining of this pandemic is that many more people have been out walking and biking in town. We want to do what we can to promote that and promote safety around that. So we're looking at everything from education initiatives to programs that focus on effective cycling, as well as driver safety, possibly education and hands-on bike experiences for our children, researching, finding out what grants and funding is available, and which interventions are most impactful, what really works, what doesn't work, and also getting a better sense of the number of accidents and risks that we currently have in the town, and things we can do to generally create awareness about sharing the road. So this committee is so impressive that I temporarily chaired it, and I'm responsible for the minutes, which I haven't done yet. But meanwhile, 2 committee members have already gotten back with research. So I'm pleased to announce our new chair that we elected is Maria Naharo, and our secretary is Patrick Castani, and I'm probably not saying either name right because I'm bad at names, but I'm very happy to have this as a community-led committee, and we're planning on meeting again in just a few weeks. So very excited about the opportunity to make some positive improvements in town.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I've noticed in recent weeks a lot more people out on bicycles. I think more than I've noticed in a while. So I think the timing of this is perfect, and hopefully we can allow more cycling through town. And I know Bell Works was encouraging that with cycles on their property. So all good. I think it's all coming together. The only update I have is Bell Works continues to be very gracious with us in allowing DPW to utilize their property for a large item drop-off occurring this Saturday. It's been very well attended thus far since we kicked it off back in May, and we continue to use our DPW site for Fridays for a recycling center between 8 to 2 under regular social distancing guidelines. I know that we have employees there monitoring the site, allowing one person at a time so everybody can drop off their recyclables in a safe environment. If nothing else from the committee, will roll into public comment. Public comment, you can go into queue, raise your hand. The clerk or deputy clerk will bring you on. Please state your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes for your comments, and please address to me directly as the mayor. Wendy? Kerry?
First up is Mike Sockel.
Hi, it's Mike Sockel, 6 Walt Hedge Lane. Can you hear me okay? I think.
Yep, perfect, Mike.
Excellent, great. Also happen to be vice president of the school board. And I'll keep my comments brief because I'm respectful of the 3-minute time limit. I'm disappointed that 9 very dedicated men and women who spend a god-awful amount of their time to ensure we have an excellent school district, their efforts in putting together what I think has been a very good budget has been attacked over the last few weeks. And particularly disappointed that some of those attacks have originated from this particular body. The truth of the matter is that we as a body are completely dependent, almost 90% dependent on property taxes, and it's the only way that we can balance our budgets, and that our budget this year is flat. It grows by less than 0.6%, actually probably less than that because we just lost over $300,000 in state aid. But the main thing that is frustrating for me is the fact that it's very simple if the township is concerned about the tax increase, because in one action, you could cut that tax increase by 25% by following the request that we've made several times before of using monies that are raised from Bell Works to pay for the safety officers that we have in our school. It is a request that is specific. We are not asking the township to give us a carte blanche check, so to speak. We're asking for funding for something very specific. I think that at the end of the day, it's detrimental to have this type of conversation publicly of conflict of who's raising taxes and who isn't. We have open sessions just as you do. And if anybody from the township was concerned about our budget, they should have joined us in 2 public hearings we had. So, you know, again, this is not intended to be political per se. It's simply a frustration that I experience as being on the school board for 10 years and always wondering why, you know, we can't just work a little closer together. And this particular request, this particular element of being able to cut our taxes by using pilot money to pay for a specific service, a service that is provided by the township to the rest of the community, to me, I don't understand the reasoning. But that's all I need to say. I certainly am also happy to answer any questions, because obviously there seem to be a lot of questions about the district, the way we spend our money, the different things that we do with our money. And I'm happy to answer any of those questions that members of the township might have, since there seem to be a lot of questions raised at the last meeting. And that's pretty much what I need to say. I think that Prakash, you wanted to ask me a question as well, so I'm happy to answer what question you have.
Yeah, so about the diversity training, that's great to know that you have diversity training in 8th grade. Yeah, coming from the corporate world, where we go through a diversity training every 2 years, I'm hoping that you would have for even children in high school.
Well, that actually, I'm sorry if I didn't clarify what I was saying, Prakash. The intolerance class is an 8th grade class that all of our students take. It's a semester-long class, and it is designed to introduce students to the topic of intolerance and why intolerance takes place, and hopefully in the process of the education, understand the things that they should be aware of so that they do not participate in intolerant behavior. As far as the administration and all of our teachers, we have policies in place that are intended to protect our employees from any acts that would be determined as harassment or racism or other things of that nature, and professional training does take place as well. So I am confident that as a district, we embrace exactly the spirit that you were expressing earlier in this meeting.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you. I don't know if you know this, there's an online petition by the current and former students of Homedale asking for exactly this. I saw this in Patch just today.
Yeah, I read I read the article. It was 2 students that actually graduated with my son, as it turns out. As I noted, there are curriculum that is dictated to us by the state that focuses on things like African American rights and issues involving slavery and issues involving different groups that have been oppressed in the United States. It is incorporated in a variety of different courses, whether it's English or history. This new class is very specific about intolerance. The 2 students who are mentioned in the patch obviously would have missed that class because they've already graduated, but going forth, every student who's in 8th grade is going to be experiencing this class protection.
Thank you. Thank you. Yep. Can I make a comment on your question related to the BOE budget?
Prakash, I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Yeah. Okay. So I do think we have an opportunity to sit with you, show you some of the things that I discovered looking at our peer group and how some of the more affluent districts spend lower per student and still have a better ranking.
I believe you were referring among those towns, Summit. Is that correct, Prakash?
That's correct. That's
of
correct.
course, you know, one of the challenges in trying to compare us to a town like Summit is that Summit has inside its city limits Celgene, which, although it's no longer an independent company, it is a billion-dollar operation. And it's great that you would bring that up, because in many ways, that's the reason why we have a K through 12 school district anyways, because of the fact we had Bell Labs, and the fact that Bell Labs basically took care of about 25% of our tax base. So when we're comparing on certain communities, it's really important to determine which communities have commercial tax bases that are similar to the commercial tax base we have now in Homedale.
Guys, I just want to intervene in respect for everybody's time. We really need to attain to the 3-minute rule. You can make your comment. You could discuss, one-on-one after, or at your Board of Ed meeting. But I appreciate
Great,
your comment.
completely fair, absolutely fair, no problem. I do not want to take more time from the Township Committee, absolutely.
Thank you, Mike. We'll talk offline.
Absolutely, happy to.
Next in line is Kelly Guerin.
You could just state your name and address.
Kelly, you're muted.
You just need to unmute yourself.
There you go.
You're back on.
Kelly, you're still muted.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yes.
Sorry, I don't use Zoom that often. I'm not a student. Okay, so my name is Kelly Guerin. I live at 4 Chippewa Court in Homedale. Tonight, I would like to urge Homedale Township to publicize its support for the Black Lives Matter movement and clearly denounce its support for the All Lives Matter and Blue Lives Matter. According to their website, Black Lives Matter is a global organization whose mission is to eradicate white supremacy and build local power to intervene in violence inflicted on Black communities by the state. In colloquial terms, supporting Black Lives Matter is to acknowledge and validate the systemic racism and inequalities experienced by Black people. To support Black Lives Matter is to take a positive stance on a human rights issue. All Lives Matter, as a response to Black Lives Matter, as mentioned by the Deputy Mayor, is considered passively racist. It outwardly dismisses the Black experience, and it shows a lack of empathy for and understanding of Black communities and hardships. Blue Lives Matter, as a response to Black Lives Matter, is also considered passively racist. Police officers choose to be police officers. They choose to risk their lives for communities, and they choose to vow to protect us. We all know and appreciate good police officers who individually make valuable contributions to our community. However, regardless of their noble intent, the institution that they become a part of often criminalizes communities of color and defends unethical police officers. They knowingly choose the profession, and they have the privilege of taking off their uniform at the end of the day. Black people do not choose to be Black. They do not choose to die at the hands of police officers, and they do not have the privilege to take a break from being Black. Supporting Blue Lives Matter is signaling that you care more about the good cops being targeted than the innocent Black lives that are victims of police brutality. As a white person, I realize it is a privilege to have to educate myself about racism instead of experiencing it. It is undeniable that Black people are treated poorly in this country in ways we can never fully understand. Our institutions, and most importantly, our minds, are riddled with racism. As a predominantly white and affluent community, it is Homedale's duty to actively support and adopt anti-racist measures. Silence is not an option here. In comparison to Monmouth County's 2019 census data, Homedale census data reveals a notably low Black population at 1.2% compared to Monmouth County's 7.6%, and a notably high median household income / per capita income. With this in mind, I see Homedale as a town that has the most to learn with the greatest resources to do so. There are no excuses, and I think the township's support of Black Lives Matter and clear pledge against racist counter movements is a necessary first step. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Next is Miss Rachel.
Hello, can you hear me?
I think before you go, Ms. Rachel, I think you have the other person still in. Okay, you got it.
My name is Rachel Brudner. I live at 9 Bristol Road, and I'm an alumni of Homedale Schools. I think a common goal for everyone here is to make our town an open and welcoming community and to make it one that is comfortable and safe for everyone. I'm grateful for my upbringing in Holmdel, but I think that if we're not questioning the structures in place that benefit our town, we are ignoring the needs of all those within our community at large. Yes, Black history is taught in some capacity in our schools, but we're largely taught that racism and segregation were things of the past, that they happened, and maybe even that we shouldn't repeat those wrongs, but they actually have profound, insidious consequences that still ravage Black communities today and work within the ways we perceive our own whiteness. Students need to learn this and learn to dismantle it. I'm happy to hear about this new class for 8th graders, Intolerance, which I didn't know about before, but I want to make the argument that this should be integrated into many aspects of our schooling. We have to contextualize these problems within our own society and acknowledge that Holmdel is the way it is for a reason. Our town is predominantly white and wealthy, and the majority of our town has access to quality education and healthcare, but we have to acknowledge how we got here and why towns like ours are able to exist. And it's because our country was built on the backs of Black and Indigenous people. White people still benefit from that every single day financially and through the opportunity we are privileged to receive. Not talking about it as a township government and in our schools says something. And I urge Holmdel to talk about it and investigate what's said by not talking about it and to do something about it. We cannot ignore the profound impact our country's policing system has had on people of color and Black people in particular. The current events are just the tipping point, and we would be remiss to go about our business as usual, even in a town with a relatively small and responsible police force. In January 2020, there was a racial profiling accusation in Holmdel in which a cop blinded a Black man, quote, with a flashlight and threatened him with a taser while never identifying himself as a cop. This cop was cleared. Ask yourself, would this have happened to a white resident? I haven't heard about other incidents like this one, but I highly doubt this is an isolated incident. Even if it is an isolated incident, what can we do to ensure it doesn't happen again? There are ways we can adapt our police force that benefit everyone, including creating a stronger sense of accountability for police officers. While acknowledging that many police officers, and perhaps most, are responsible and trustworthy, what is Holmdel's policy for ensuring that officers are truly protecting people of all races? I commend the proposed implementation of body cameras, but these cameras mean relatively nothing if police are not held accountable. In what ways are police officers currently held accountable if they are suspected of things like racial bias? Are cops liable for misconduct sentences? Have you considered suspending the use of paid administrative leave for cops under investigation? I wonder if these would also be cost-effective measures for a town with such high taxes. Peace is the goal for everyone, and that cannot happen for all people until Black people are treated fairly, and this starts locally with tangible change. As a part of a system that treats others unfairly, all white people have the responsibility to educate themselves and others about racial injustice and speak out on it, and Holmdel is no exception to this. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Next up is Natasha Kostick.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm Natasha Kostick. I'm speaking on behalf of my whole family at 8 Sunrise Circle in Holmdel. I appreciate the comments made by the committee members so far during this meeting, but I've not seen any public comments in regards to the Black Lives Matter movement on social media.
Kara, I think we lost her. Natasha, can you start over again? We lost you.
Yes, so my name is Natasha Kostick. I'm speaking on behalf of my family at 8 Sunrise Circle. I do appreciate the comments made by the committee members during this meeting, but I've not seen any public comments thus far in regards to the Black Lives Matter movement, as others have noted. I ask that the committee publicly condemns racism on the township social media platforms. We must recognize that as a predominantly white upper middle class community, we experience policing completely differently from Black communities. Modern day policing was built on laws meant to persecute the underserved and protect the privileged. A very visible example of this is in how marijuana possession is addressed, actually. In Monmouth County, Black people are 4.6 times more likely to be arrested than white people for possession, according to the American Civil Liberties Union. But both groups use marijuana at roughly equal rates. The disparity just means that rich white kids aren't getting in trouble. We also see unfair policing in the racial profiling case that Rachel had mentioned. Last year, a Black Holmdel resident was stopped outside his front door by a yelling police officer who didn't announce himself. Can you think of a time a white man in Holmdel was stopped in front of his home? I can't. Some Holmdelians see police as a source of safety, but a majority of Black Americans and other people of color see them as a threat. We must work to make Homedale a safer and more welcoming place to all people by reducing police presence. One way to do this is by redirecting funds to other community resources, like the First Aid Squad. I spoke to the supervisor of the Middletown Squad, which currently has collaborative paid and volunteered squads. He explained that the municipal government sets a framework that is used to determine whether EMS and police or just EMS are dispatched. Currently in Homedale, armed police are present at all emergency calls. This is unnecessary and can be easily changed by the local government. Why do police need to respond to calls at the senior center or calls for chest pain? You may ask why this is relevant. The police don't seem to be disturbing anything in these cases. But it would matter in a Black community where police are more likely to escalate a stressful situation. So it has to matter to us. Additionally, by reducing police presence, we can reallocate funds to creating a paid EMT squad, or to mental health resources in our school, or to reducing our community's carbon footprint through sustainable practices. Currently, police are asked to solve nearly every social problem, from drug use to homelessness to domestic violence to neighborhood disputes. Instead of giving funds to a police system that has enormous unchecked authority and is rarely held accountable, we must focus on funding community building organizations that can address the issues rather than criminalizing them. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Next in line is Chris O'Neill.
Can you hear me?
Yes, please state your name and address, please.
My name is Christopher O'Neill. I reside at 10 Crepe Myrtle Drive in Homedale, New Jersey. I'd like to reiterate what Natasha and Kelly have requested and urge the mayor to publicly address the committee's support of the Black Lives Matter movement and in a written address to all residents of Homedale. And I'd also like to ask for some policies to be instated with regard to Homedale Police Department's accountability and uses of force in their practices. So I'd like to ask that to ensure the department writes and enforces a highly restrictive deadly force policy only to be used when there is an imminent threat to the officer's life and the life of another person, and the use of such force is unavoidable to protect life. Data on police-involved shooting incidents should be publicly available. Similarly, there should exist a written policy governing the use of physical force. Officers should be necessitated to file a written report after the use of physical force to be reviewed by a superior officer. Any officers found to use an excessive amount of physical force should be put on leave. And additionally, I support the use of body cameras. I'm glad to see that they were already on the 2020 goals list, and I hope to see those enacted further. And again, I appreciate the efforts to ensure diversity on the police force, as previously stated at the start of this meeting. With these policies in place, Homedale will be better equipped to properly address issues in the future if they were to arise. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comment.
Next is Samira. I'm sorry, I'm going to say your last name wrong. I'm just going to leave it. There you go.
Samir, you could take yourself off mute and then state your
Hi,
name.
can you hear me?
Yep.
Hi, my name is Samira Anfuoshe. I reside at 14 Stonehenge Drive. And I do want to really reiterate what Kelly, Natasha, Rachel, and Chris had said. As someone who has lived in Homedale since the 90s, and as a Black resident of Homedale at the time that it was 0.5%, I do have to say that the incident that happened in January 2020 is not one-off. Personally, at times we do have to show that we are a resident of the town as we are viewed as strangers due to the color of our skin. Our family members when visiting us have often had cops called on them. Now, although we may not have a George Floyd situation in Homedale, we do have a lot of Amy Cooper situations in Homedale. And I do think that residents that call cops for reasons such as what Amy Cooper did in Central Park should have be held, that should be held against them, because it's unfair that they have these biases that view Black residents as criminals and strangers as intruders, as you would say to Homedale. Also, the next thing that I do want to say is that when it comes to the Homedale school system, Homedale students typically leave after graduating with a woefully limited exposure to events and circumstances outside of their immediate local bubble. This puts them at a disadvantage of understanding larger social and civic issues. American history is taught it needs to be taught with contents. Black history is American history, and we make a huge failure in Homedale school system to talk about Black history and remove it from American history. I knew that someone did mention that there's an inclusion being done in 8th grade. This is something that needs to be done at the elementary school, and it cannot just be a class. It has to actually be how our history is being taught to us. We cannot talk about the Civil War without talking about Bacon rebellions. We cannot talk about civil rights without talking about Ruby Bridges. We act as though this is a long time ago when Ruby Bridges is 65 years old, the age of a lot of our parents. So I think, truthfully, when it comes to Homedale's Board of Education, we just need to actually teach American history as to what American history truly is, because you cannot you cannot talk about the story of America without talking about the treatment of Black people and how this country was built on the backs of Black people. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Next is Rachel S.
No, I don't see her, Carrie.
There we go.
Rachel, you could just state your name and address.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're very faint.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I'm so sorry.
Rachel, just pause for a second. Rachel, you have a really bad connection. Rachel, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, now.
Can you hear me now?
It's all echo and tinny, Rachel. We're not picking you up.
If you'd like, you can call in, press *9. That will be the same as
We can't hear you, Rachel.
Rachel, if you can hear me, there's a call-in number.
I'll go do that now. Thank you.
Carrie, is she on computer or phone?
She's on the computer.
I think she just said she's going to call in.
Okay.
So why don't we have the next speaker, and then when she calls in, we can allow her to speak.
Yep.
Next up is Valentina M.
Hi, my name is Valentina Melikova of 13 Fairmount Road, Homedale, New Jersey. I'm of the Homedale High School class of 2014 and one of the co-authors of the letters that was addressed to the Board of Education. I would like to give Rachel the opportunity to speak later about why the purposes of this letter and why we released it. But I'm sure that everyone is wondering about the actionable steps that could be taken to further this letter. Since the release of the letter, we have over 600 signatures supporting the need to address the curriculum and the teacher training at the Homedale School District. Following this support, we plan to have a discussion with the superintendent and Board of Education. We would also like to have a discussion with my education policy cohort and faculty at the University of Pennsylvania Graduate School of Education, who are experts on this topic and support these initiatives. Further, I would like to take part in discussions with experienced professionals who have worked to develop inclusive curriculums throughout different school districts in the United States and in similar school districts with demographics like that of Homedale High School and Homedale schools in general. And then we would like to provide a comprehensive list of resources and books that are organized by grade level and suggested both by individuals who signed the petition and professionals in the education field. So we appreciate the courses and books that are offered through Homedale schools. But as many mentioned, and as recent events have shown, we really need to reevaluate and expand this education further. And we are open to continued feedback and support in furthering the scope of education offered at Homedale schools.
Valentina, thank you for your comment. Is Rachel back on, Carrie? Rachel S., I think.
I think this is her.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, hi, I'm Rachel Scheinbar, and
Val and I are from the graduating class of 2014, and we drafted the letter that she just brought up. We drafted this letter to the Board of Education to respectfully request a curriculum update for Homedale school system. We would like them to address topics of racial inequity and systemic racism. Since posting our letter yesterday afternoon, we have had an overwhelming support with over 600 signatures already. Some of the things we would like to see change in the district are teacher participation in diversity and inclusion training, updated book lists and other resources to include to be included in the curriculum beginning in kindergarten. While we're very happy to have learned of the Standing Up to Intolerance mandatory course for the 8th grade students now, we feel that it is very important to see those same topics and issues incorporated across all grade levels, not just the 8th grade. We also would like history classes that accurately account historical events from all perspectives, not just the white perspective. And we would like discussions about white privilege and the acknowledgement that the country was founded on racism and oppression. We want the district to recognize that issues currently plaguing our country stem back to events that occurred in the past. I think one of the council members mentioned before that our petition was featured in the Homedale and Hazlitt Patch today. We encourage everyone who agree with our letter to go see the post and read the letter, and you can sign from the link in the article. Thank you so much for your support, and thank you everyone who has spoken so far. I applaud you on your great topic. I think this is an important change that this town desperately needs.
Rachel, thank you for your comment.
Next is Lindsay Neuberger.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Lindsay, just please state your name and address.
Hi, I'm Lindsay Neuberger at 19 Goldsmith Drive, Homedale High School, class of 2014. I want to first state that I stand with all of my classmates who have spoken before. I have a couple of suggestions in regards to the police force and possibly reallocating resources. My first suggestion is to reallocate resources away from police presence in Homedale schools and towards mental health programs. Currently, right now, if you visit the Homedale Township website, all that is listed are general suicide hotlines and things like that. I remember when I was in school, we had guidance counselors, but they dealt with academic problems. I want to note that my junior year of high school, a student actually threatened to kill me and my entire class, and I had never had contact with this person before. He was a stranger and somebody who was desperately in need of access to proper mental health resources. Instead of having police officers in the building, we should be proactive in preventing shootings. We should also not be resorting to cops for small incidences, such as stolen calculators, which is a real example of something I experienced. I feel like small incidents like that should be handled by Homedale staff and not police officers. To follow this point, promise was mentioned earlier to include diversity within the police department. I hope this is not an empty promise. All of the police lieutenants, as well as the chief and captain, are white men. I noted in the budget that they were looking at hiring a new officer. If this is really truly necessary, let it be someone other than a white man. I know in 2015, an article came out talking about an allegation from a woman who was in the process of trying to get a job with the Homedale Police Department. And she alleged that they gave the position to 3 men who had less qualifications than her. In regards to the racial profiling that was mentioned earlier, how can a police department be expected to make an unbiased decision on allegations of mistreatment when they are all white men and do not have that level of relation to the people that they are mistreating? And finally, on use of force, I'm glad to hear that the chief is angered by George Floyd's murder. For a town with relatively little crime, there's still a significant amount of instances of use of force. It was reported that there were 2.4 violent crimes per 10,000 people in an article from 2017. And in a police report of use of force, it was noted that there were 26 incidents filed and 15 that were necessitated. I'm not exactly sure how that was decided. I want more transparency, because an internal affairs summary in 2019 showed that within the category of demeanor, there were 12 citizen complaints and 1 agency complaint, and of those, only 1 was sustained. I know that the racial profiling case from December was dismissed with ease. I want to know who is running these internal affairs investigations, and in the future, I want it to be independent of the police department. And my final point, there's only 1 public database of use of force in relation to specific officers, and it is from 2012 to 2016 and does not indicate how many of these incidents have occurred in each year. For example, 1 officer has 8 instances of use of force. We need greater transparency, maybe more public databases in order to address which officers need retraining, suspension, or in drastic cases, termination of their position. Officers with 2 or more use of force incidents within a quarter of the year should be reported and retrained. According to the National Institute of Justice, it is key to have an early warning system of a police officer who is abusing his or her power, and those departments that implemented this type of system saw a reduction in problematic behaviors. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for coming, Lindsay.
Next is James Yanello.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Your microphone's a little garbled.
Can you hear me now better?
A little better, yeah.
Okay. I appreciated hearing some personal experiences.
Please state your name and address, sorry.
James Yanello, 18 Ladwood Drive. I was appalled with what happened, the murder of George Floyd. I very much appreciate the personal experiences and suggestions from the Black woman who lives in town. Some of these other comments seem well scripted, almost aggregated from the outside. I don't know. But I will tell you one thing. I grew up in a 100% Italian family. I grew up in another town without many Black friends. I didn't have much experience with Black friends or Black families. But my daughters grew up in Homedale from day one. Again, an Italian family. And some of their best friends are Black. And we've had great interactions with them, even as a father to my daughter with some of these kids. Very warm, friendly, close friendships. And I'm just very happy about that. So while clearly there's some opportunities for improvement and some maybe things to look at, I think the impression from some of these statements being read might be a little overdone for this town. Again, there's stuff to learn. There could be some changes, but my daughters have been brought up in a very nice environment, and some of their best friends are Black. And I just wanted that to be clear. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comment.
And the last hand up is Hannah Friedman.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Hattie, just please state your name and address.
Sure, my name is Hannah Friedman. I live at 6 Ardmore Place. I'm glad that James gave us the opportunity to kind of address the problem really at hand here. I want to thank everyone who shared. I agree immensely, especially Samira. Thank you for sharing your personal experience. And Lindsay, I think you had some really great suggestions, especially for increased transparency, as well as, you know, reevaluating the funding of the police and thinking about maybe putting more mental health resources and into our schools. Just because people have had pleasant experiences does not mean that systemic racism is not real. And just because this is a majority white town does not mean that systemic racism is not real. So James and anyone who agrees with James, I'm so very glad that your family is loving and that your family has had wonderful experiences with Black people. But that's not going to actually change anything. What all of the students who are not scripted, or I don't know if this is some conspiracy theory that's being posed, these are just passionate students who see civil rights and human rights violations going on in their country, and they're upset, and they are answering the call to action to find justice, not only in the country as a whole, but in their community at home. They're trying to do the work and stay local, you know, because on some level we can only fix what's in our own backyards first. So I don't think I have much more to add, but I hope that everyone will take this opportunity to reflect, even though we may not see the very obvious signals of racism in our own town. We don't have to go outside our doors and watch George Floyd be murdered in front of us, but that doesn't mean that we ourselves are not impacted by systemic racism and are not being subtly taught these things and these prejudices through our education and through our community values. And I just wanted to, because in this forum, we can't see how many people here are online to support this statement that Black Lives Matter and that Homedale has a role to play in that movement. I know that I was the last comment, but if there are any other students, alumni, community members who logged on to this meeting for this purpose, to maybe just raise your hand and just say your name and the simple statement that Black Lives Matter. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, Hannah. Carrie?
Next up is Sarah Stark.
There's a comment that was submitted by Sean McDermott as well. Just what I wanted you to know.
We were going to wait and get everybody that has their hands raised first, since he said he left the meeting.
Okay.
I saw you can state your name and address, please.
Hi, yeah, my name is Sarah Stark. I live at 4 Sunrise Circle. I would just like to say that the comments that you've heard tonight may have sounded scripted to you because they were written by students and alumni of Homedale High School who are speaking to a committee, and that is rather nerve-wracking, especially when you have a message that you are so profoundly passionate about, and you are working to see institutional change come about within the community that you grew up in. And so it's really great that your children are growing up in a place where they have the, ability to make close friendships with Black people, but that does not mean that the Black people within that community are having the exact same type of experience that your children are having. This issue of racism in America is so deeply rooted in our history, and it's something that needs to be confronted head on and with full speed. And that, I think, begins at a young age with children and with their education. And it requires that you build the topic of white supremacy, how it still very much exists within our communities and within the fabric of our society. It starts at a very young age, and it requires repetition and reinforcement throughout the educational process from a young age to graduating high school. So that is my opinion. I think it is a very good idea to start teaching children very young about white supremacy, racial discrimination, how it affects every single thing within our society, and how we can each work to look at our implicit bias and check ourselves as we move throughout our lives and as we develop as people. I would like to say that Black Lives Matter, and I support what Hannah said, and if you've come here to show your support for this movement, I think it's a great time to raise your hand and also say Black Lives Matter and add your 2 cents. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sarah, for your comment.
Next up is Sam.
Sam, if you can just state your name and address.
Hi, yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Sam Golden. I'm at 51 Sage Street here in Homedale. like Hannah, I'm an alumnus of the class of 2015 from Homedale High School, and I want to support what she had said, just because there are positive instances with Black residences in Homedale, and that the kids in our schools are feeling positively and are making friends with people in the communities. It does not mean that there is no it does not mean that there's no problem there, okay? I think that it is really important to address these issues moving forward through the classes that we're going to have, through the, sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry, my microphone is cracked. Put it short, I do think that Black lives really do matter, and we need to understand that Homedale is a bubble. With 1.2% of our community being Black, the national average is around 13 to 14%, which is 10 times more than what we have in our town. Not saying that we're disillusioned to anything, but we do live in a bubble that requires ourselves to be more positive about changing the way we look at these things. What Val and Rachel had written in the letter was superb. I think that we need to change up the way the kids see this, and we'll see the change happen years and years from now. And we're going to be a town that kind of looks forward into the future about these kind of things. And we have the opportunity to do this right now. I yield my time, and Black Lives Matter.
Sam, thank you for your comment.
Next is Christiana Lahoff.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, please state your name and address, Christiana.
Hi, my name is Christiana Lahoff. A former Homedale High School alum, and I lived at 15 Riverside Lane. I would just like to agree and speak up in my support of the Black Lives Matter movement, and in so many of the other previous alumnus students that have spoken up. I do agree absolutely that Homedale is a bubble. My brother-in-law, who is also a Homedale alum, is currently a teacher at Rumson Fairhaven, and he had written me a text that I would like to read that I think is very important to share. The problem in Homedale is that no one really interacts with people of other communities. I completely agree that Homedale is a bubble. The only thing they learn about, Black history is what they learn in their US history or English class. They read about Civil War or Civil Rights Movement. They read Frederick Douglass or Toni Morrison, but that doesn't do the same as talking about the Black experience now. Students see it as a foregone age, a moment in history that's over. And that is on the Homedale public school system for sweeping these racial injustices under the rug by touching on what is required of the curriculum and not going further to speak on the matter. They should look into more current events. They should bring in speakers. They should read authors like Trevor Noah or Ta-Nehisi Coates. They should be encouraged to engage in political events and activism. That's how you get them to actually understand and not see them as just a part, not see Black history as just a part of the past. They never think to look outside of the bubble in the school that they're growing in. And I think that's something that we need to start in our school system at a young age as well. It's not something that can only be done in one 8th grade history, or like in one 8th grade inclusion class. It needs to be from a very young age throughout all the years in the school system. And also to touch on the staff at the Homedale school systems, I also think there should be required for, testing on unconscious biases, because I think that is something that is very important. I'm currently a healthcare worker, and I know that that's something they have us do. And I think that's something that everyone should be doing, because you don't even realize the biases you may have, but it is extremely important to be aware of that and to check with yourself before you have an impact on other people. Thank you.
Christiana, thank you for your comment.
Next is Kimberly T.
Hi, Kimberly, just state your name and address, please.
Hi, this is Kimberly Tan. My address is 54 Chocolisa Drive. First, I wanted to thank Sarah for encouraging us to speak up. In reality, yes, just as Mr. Mr. James was saying earlier, a lot of us did come here with scripts. We kind of took the prompt that we had 3 minutes to speak, and that we should take those 3 minutes and really talk from the heart, and talk to the Township Committee. So yes, definitely it was scripted. And I do agree also with the second point that it seems to be coming externally. Because I think it's a reality that these students graduated from school here at Homedale Townships, and we did have the Homedale history courses and what they offered and what they taught us, and then went on to university or went on to living in the real life, the real world, as everyone has been echoing and mentioning that Homedale is a bubble. And what that does, what living outside of high school and beyond did is make us realize just how much of a bubble Homedale is. So why we're really so impassioned to say that we need to re-educate and revamp our K through 12 curricula is because it is a reality that Homedale is predominantly white and affluent, and that's not a bad thing. And maybe, yes, there have been really warm and great interactions with the Black students that live here, our children's friends, but what we need to teach is how students can see that reality of living in a really idyllic town versus the civil unrest that's happening nationwide and globally. So yes, I definitely agree. We are coming from scripts and we are coming from an external side of this, but that's important to still listen to. And thank you for listening.
Thank you, Kimberly, for your comment.
Next is Barbara.
It's actually Paige Singer. I'm Barbara's daughter. I'm from, I live at 5 Deerfield Road. And I just wanted to say that even though we do have 10 times less the normal amount of Black population here, it doesn't mean that we don't need to have rallies and educate ourselves. I think that that means we need to reach out even more and go the extra mile to educate ourselves, which is kind of why I put the rally together. For those of you who don't know, there's a rally on Thursday, starting at 3, starting at Homedale High School. And I'd really appreciate the support of the Township Committee in doing this. And it's great to hear other residents I don't know wanting change in our educational system. And I support that it will take time, and the rally is just a way to quickly spread awareness and promote equality. So thank you to everyone who spoke and who will be at the rally.
Thank you, Paige, for your comment.
And there's no new hands.
So guys, we're going to have to go back into executive session.
Mayor, there was one comment that Committeeman Santana mentioned that was in the chat box that I think that was going to be addressed, and then
we have a chat from Sean McDermott, and he says that he's unable to wait because it seems like it's going to be a long time, and he had 2 questions. The first question, he wanted to get some feedback from Committeeman Santana as to the Financial Advisory Committee's review of the recent submitted budget. For all media accounts, all municipal budgets in New Jersey will adversely be affected due to COVID. When reviewing the budget, did the advisory board assess the potential loss of revenues from COVID-19 and other variables such as tax loss revenue, the township's tax setup with Bell Works, which is the overall evaluation of the committee in conjunction to the current debt load and the newly submitted budget? Will we need to raise taxes and or bond for any loss of revenue?
Let me answer this, and maybe Sharon, you can.
Well, it's really a statement. We're going to have our budget hearing next week. It's really not a question and answer period. It's public comment, Prakash. So I'd rather just hold it next week. Any other statement or comment?
No, the only other, he had a question for Rocco, but he's not here again, so maybe the mayor can answer the question concerning the new firehouse. He's heard that 5 million is the number for bonding of the new firehouse. I also have heard that over 1 million of that is for a fire truck. Is there a breakdown of the cost, and are these figures updated for the bond debt service, considering municipal bonds will be higher as they typically are in a bad economy?
Yep. Thank you. Thank you for the comment. So because we have to go, if the committee has a couple minutes, we need to go back into an executive session tonight. There's not going to be any action taken tonight, and we will not be coming out from executive and coming back into public session this evening.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
can I just make one comment? I would just like to respond to the many young alumni and students that spoke tonight. And I would just like to say thank you for having the courage to speak up. I know it's not easy to do in a public forum. And I'd like to encourage you to share these same comments with the Board of Education. As you're aware, as a Township Committee, we have no jurisdiction over the Board of Education relative to curriculum. But I would like to note, for whatever failings there may be or opportunity to change in our curriculum, it has clearly equipped each and every one of you with the skills to learn and question and grow. And for that, I commend you. I would also like to encourage each and every one of you to vote and to run for office. Be the change that you want to have happen, because you give me hope going forward, because Black Lives Matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Counselor, to go back into exec, we need to go back on the other Zoom meeting that we had earlier. You're muted.
Michael, we can't hear you.
You're muted.
I'm sorry about that. I think, yes, Mayor, it would be proper to have a motion to close the public session and to recess into executive session to continue the discussion on the items that were on the original executive session resolution. As you mentioned, there will not be any further public actions.
I have
Be
a
aware of
question for practicality, Mike.
Yes.
Given that normally in an executive session, we close executive session, we go out into the public and we say, and we adjourn that meeting. We're not going to be able to do that with this change Zoom. Is there, can we acknowledge that? Or
I think it's fair to say that the Zoom sessions kind of bifurcate the meetings, but I think it's fair to say that it follows the notion of being the public meeting that was noticed on the public meeting notice. So I don't see any issue with us exiting this Zoom session and returning to the executive Zoom session to complete the executive session.
You have a motion to adjourn? You have a motion?
Move.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, everyone, for coming out tonight. We're going to exit this and we're going back into executive. Have a good night.
Thank you.